Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzhak Reuven speaking to you from south of Jerusalem, here in the land of Israel, the beautiful Holy Land of Israel. Today is the 5th day of the month of Shvat, 5784. It's January 15th, 2024. This coming Shabbat we read Parashat Bo, which is the third Torah reading in the book of Exodus. Parashat Bo begins in the book of Exodus, chapter 10, verse 1, concludes chapter 13, verse 6, and it basically takes us through the final three of the 10 Makot, the 10 plagues visited upon Egypt, and describes the very beginning of the Exodus, and of course between this and this is, of course, the first commandment that Israel will receive as a nation, to determine the new month, the new moon, and of course the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering, and all the other details of the Seder, the Passover meal. This very first Passover, known as Pesach Mitzrayim, the Passover of Egypt, with the blood on the doorposts, and all those details. We'll be talking about that in just a few moments. So things are really coming to a head in this parsha. No more playing around. Hashem has taken the gloves off, and Egypt and Pharaoh, for all his obstinacy and his egoism and his refusal to recognize God, pay a very heavy price. In current news, we also are confronting people who, in the name of God, they refuse to recognize God. How do you like that? They refuse to recognize the one true God. They call upon God, and they justify their bestial, barbaric, heinous ways on their belief in God, but the God they're calling upon is not a God that any God-fearing person can recognize. They're calling upon a God who they claim wants them to murder and torture and mutilate and rape and defile other human beings. What kind of a God is that? What kind of a God is that? If you're a person that believes in that kind of a God, then what kind of a person are you? Not someone that I would recognize as... I wouldn't recognize you. And I wouldn't want to live next to you. I really don't want to live in the world with you. Yes, there is one God. But you can twist and turn and claim everything to be in God's name, but it isn't. And it's very clear God created us from one human being, created Adam, and we're all the children of Adam. And murder is a crime against God, a crime against his creation. We've known that from the very start. So who are you trying to kid, saying that your God is commanding you to kill, mutilate, rape, defile other people because they don't see things the way you see things? So yes, this insistence, this stubbornness, this obstinacy, this refusal to recognize the one God in the world, even when your refusal is in the name of God, it's a thing. It's been going on for thousands of years. Pharaoh also, he doesn't recognize Hashem. I don't know Hashem. But then, a number of times, especially in these later plagues, he says, you're right, I'm wrong. Just go worship Hashem and put in a prayer for me also. He recognizes, but he doesn't recognize. He sees God's power, but he refuses to live his life in accordance with what he sees. He refuses to see that God's power and God's demand to liberate, to let my people go, is based on a moral imperative of freedom of worship, of freedom of people to live free, of an equality between people, of nobody should be anybody else's slave. Nobody should rule over anybody else. We have one ruler, and that's Hashem. And he refused to live his life in accordance. So, doing the talking the talk, and not doing the walk isn't good enough. We're all imperfect human beings, and we all can certainly improve our walk as well as our talk. But those who do the talk with a lot of certainty, and yet their walk is way out of line, way out of step with the walk of Hashem, those people are hypocrites, and worse than hypocrites. They are dangerous people. And wow, the question is asked, why 10 plagues? Hashem could have done it all at once. Why put everybody through this? Why stretch it out? Hashem could have done the plague of the firstborn first, or he could have done whatever he could have done, and it'd be over in a day, in a moment. Yet God stretched out the 10 plagues over many, many months, and many, many devastations, each plague being a new devastation to the people and the land and even the livestock and even the produce of Egypt. Why? Well, the Torah tells us, Hashem says more than once, a number of times over the past few chapters and verses we've been reading, I'm doing it so that all of Egypt will know that I am Hashem, that there's no other like me, that it's only me, that Egypt shall know, that Israel shall know, and that all the world shall know that there is but one God, and nobody dare lift a finger in denying Hashem what his will is, and his will is right, his will is good. His will is for the good of all of us. So Hashem draws it out because people being people, and don't pick things up so fast. And it took 10 plagues. Finally, the 10th finally broke Pharaoh, and he finally, threw up his arms and said, "I lose, you win." However, we'll find out next week, spoiler alert, that after he sends Israel out, that he will return to his old ways, and then send his army out after them to bring them back. So mankind is very, very stubborn and very foolish. Today, there it was Pharaoh, and even Pharaoh's advisors, we read last week, his advisors were saying, this is the finger of God. Until how long are you going to do this to us? You keep refusing to let them go, and in the meantime, Egypt is being devastated. We're going to be finished. We're not going to have a country. Let them go. So even his advisors, and then later his people. And we read in this week's Parsha that Moshe became very great in the eyes of the Egyptians. They saw him someone holy. They saw him someone who had a God. And so in the case of Egypt, ultimately it was Pharaoh who understood himself to be a deity, to be God, to be a god amongst a pantheon of gods, and he wasn't going to bow down to the real God. Inasmuch as Moshe, as we know, was the most humble, the most modest man on earth, and we read that in the book of Numbers, but that is why Hashem chose him to lead the people out, because Hashem could speak through Moshe Moshe didn't have any ego. He didn't have any sense of self that could impede Hashem's words. And he's facing off with the most egotistic man on earth, Pharaoh, who everything was him. Everything was about him. So it was from his very essential understanding of his own being, he couldn't possibly cave in, as he would see it. He couldn't possibly acknowledge God in this entire 10-plague episode. Today, we see there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people in the world who are marching. I mean, just yesterday, they were climbing on and pulling on the gates surrounding the White House in Washington, saying horrible things about the President of the United States, and calling on the murder and death of the Jews, which isn't an attack on the Jews, it's an attack on the God of the Jews. It's an attack on God. And there's people all over the world. And, it's... I guess I'm speaking to the choir here. I hope I am. I hope that you're not among those people. But, what is this all about? What have you been teaching your children? There's more and more being revealed, as far as I can see, in America, about the educational system. It's not just the universities. It's the high schools, history books that they're using. Just are filled with lies. And this apparently has been going on for some time, because an entire generation has grown up, being taught lies about Israel, being completely ignorant, it would seem, about ancient history, not to mention modern history, about Israel's divine right to be in the land of Israel. And they are just like Pharaoh. They are, they're setting themselves up, they're taking God on. And they think that they can win this. They think they can get away with this. They think if they shout and are violent enough and shout enough obscenities, and their intentions are vile enough, and that they perpetrate crimes against humanity, that they're going to win, that they're going to prove, they're going to show that they're stronger than God. They haven't learned a thing. They're talking 4,000 years, and there are people today who haven't learned a thing, which is why one of the reasons why we're commanded in this week's Parashat Bo to not only perform the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering, and have the Passover meal, the Seder, with the maror, with the bitter herbs, with the matzot, with the matzahs, and with the haroset. We're commanded to do that every generation. And every generation, our children are commanded to ask why. It's good to ask why, but you have to hear the answer. And the answer is because Hashem took me out of Egypt. Me, not my grandfather, not my great-grandfather, not my great-great-grandfather, me. I was in Egypt. Hashem took me out. It has to be immediate. We have to feel it. We have to know it deep within ourselves that yes, we too were slaves in Egypt. And you can understand that slavery in all different ways. You can understand it simply from that historical perspective. You can understand it as being a slave to certain things today, to being a slave to certain trends, to being a slave to politically correct, to be a slave to wokeness, to be a slave to all this racial what is it? Not equality. It's oh, you know what I mean. I can't even think of the words right now. Where people are being judged, literally, in democratic United States and other places, people are being judged solely by the color of their skin or by their ethnic identity, even if their skin color doesn't match their ethnic identity. I mean, it's all made up. It's all make-believe. And it's all a lie. We are who we are inside. We are a manifestation of our souls, of our beliefs, of our knowledge of right and wrong, of how we behave with one another. It's our character. That's how we are to be seen and to be judged and to be understood, not by very, very, very superficial, unimportant, insignificant physical details. Where did you come up with that? Well, I guess we can figure out where you came up with these things. But how pathetic. Simply pathetic. And so what I'm saying is the Exodus, the liberation, Yitziat Mitzrayim, the going out of Egypt, can mean so many things to every one of us. And it could be extremely personal to us. And it should be extremely personal to us. And each one of us, I would imagine, has a personal Yitziat Mitzrayim, a personal exodus from Egypt, as well as having a relationship to the historical exodus. And it's something that we need to focus on and to be grateful for and to celebrate and celebrate each year, to acknowledge each day. And yes, it is a commandment among the 613 Torah commandments to acknowledge Yitziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, each day. And it's part of the Shema. It's part of what we say every day, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. In every aspect of our tefillah, of our prayer, we are always remembering our exodus from Egypt. Because if we forget, we see what happens when we forget. There's really no, middle ground here. You either understand and appreciate and acknowledge and are grateful for freedom, or you're not. And if you're not, then you're in the world of control, in the world of domination, in the world of hatred, in the world of violence, in the world of let's kill those people because they're not like us. And let's make up all sorts of make-believe facts about them to justify and to convince others that we're right. Right now, Israel's on trial. Imagine that. Israel's on trial in the International Court of Justice, or whatever it's called, in The Hague. Charges of genocide brought up by the government of South Africa, a country that has serious problems, and one of the most violent places on earth, a country that has very, very warm and close relations with Hamas. Ooh, that's a surprise. And they have brought Israel to international court, charges of genocide, because Israel is fighting back, because Israel did not roll over and die when thousands of Hamas terrorists and Gazan civilians entered into Israel on October 7th and did what they did, and we're happy that they did it, and we're proud that they did it, and record it with their GoPros and on their phones and in social media, all that they were doing, and we're proud of it and happy, and all that is being brought up as evidence today by Israel in this mock trial, in this kangaroo court, which, from what I understand, they're saying, you can't bring this in as evidence. A visual recorded evidence recorded by the terrorists themselves as they were gleefully murdering and mutilating and burning and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't bring it up as evidence. It's a joke. It's a joke. But I guess the bright side is that it gives Israel another opportunity on the international scene, international level to show and to exhibit all these things, all this evidence. And there's still people who claim that, it might not be true, it didn't happen, we don't know. Come on. I don't know why. I truly don't know why. There are people that would rather cling to darkness and lies and death and hatred than just open their eyes and their hearts and see that good and light, and maybe there can be a better world, and you don't have to be on the side of darkness and death and destruction. You don't have to be a nihilist. You don't have to believe that all is bad. Because that's really what they believe. The people who are supporting Hamas and supporting the Houthis from Yemen and supporting Iran and supporting Hezbollah. They all believe in darkness, and darkness was the last plague that we read about in this week's Parashat Bo. It was the next to the last plague. The last three plagues take place in this week's Parasha, beginning with locusts, who devour everything left in Egypt after the previous plague of hail. And then comes 3 days of darkness that was so dark that people could not see one another, that people couldn't move because it was so dark. It was like you were enclosed in a tomb. And there are people today, quite clearly, who are enclosed in darkness. That's all they see. And they want to spread that darkness, but we mustn't let them. We must spread the light to stamp out the darkness. Let's just read from the first few verses of Parashat Bo. Bo means come to Pharaoh. So we're going to read the first few, chapter 10 in the book of Exodus, verse 1. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe bo el Paro ki ani hichbarati et libo ve'et lev avadav lama'an shiti ototai ele bekirbo ulama'an tesaper ba'ozne vincha uven bincha et asher hit'alalti b'mitzrayim ve'et ototai asher samti bam vida'atem ki ani Hashem. Hashem said to Moshe, "Come to Pharaoh, for I have made his heart and the heart of his servants stubborn." Literally in Hebrew, I have weighed them down. I have made his heart heavy, so that I can put these signs of mine in his midst, and so that you may relate in the ears of your son and your son's son that I made a mockery of Egypt, and my signs that I placed among them, that you may know that I am Hashem. So as I mentioned before, Hashem is doing this not simply to liberate Israel from Egyptian slavery, but to liberate everybody, including the Egyptians, from their own mental, spiritual slavery of worshiping things that aren't God, of worshiping themselves, of worshiping their king, of worshiping animals and trees and the stars, all these things that are beautiful, wonderful things perhaps, but none of them are God, and none of them are the source or the originator of all that there is. And to worship them is to put yourself into darkness, to put yourself in a prison, to enslave yourself. So Hashem he's going for it all. He wants to break the bank here. He wants to not only take Israel out of Egypt and make them his people, but he wants to really liberate Egypt from their own spiritual servitude, from their own spiritual darkness. So that's why he's going through all these things. And again, it says that I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. And we've seen many times, after each plague, Pharaoh, he starts to waver, he gives in, you can go, and then just, undo the plague. Moshe goes out and undoes the plague, and then he says, no, you can't go. He hardens his heart. Right? He changes his mind. You can't go. And then we see a few times, including now, Hashem says, I'm going to harden his heart. You can understand this in different ways. Some people might say, very justifiably, but if Hashem's hardening his heart, then isn't that not fair? I mean, it's not him, so it's like Hashem's not giving him a choice. So why should he be punished? And don't people have free will? Well, as I see it, we have free will as long as we acknowledge the source of our free will, which is Hashem. And we learn all about that in the very beginning of the book of Bereshit, of Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, when Adam was basically given a choice. He was told not to do something. When you're told not to do something, it means that you can not do it as you're told, or you can do it. He went for choice. God laid it out there for him. He chose the world of knowledge, of good and evil. He chose responsibility, because with choice comes responsibility. So if we refuse, as Pharaoh does, to acknowledge that Hashem is the source of our freedom of choice, that freedom of choice is a gift that Hashem bequeathed us. If we refuse that knowledge, then we don't have that freedom of choice. And I would say that's a big part of the problem of all those people out in the streets today who are marching and chanting in favor of terror, of violence, of massacre, and somehow believe that there's some glory in that. They have closed their hearts to Hashem. They have lost the ability to be able to discern between good and bad, to make the right choices, because they refuse to acknowledge the source of that freedom. And, these people that are out protesting in the United States, and they're not just protesting against Israel. They're protesting against the United States. They say horrible things about the United States, a country that many of them either were born into or their parents were born into, or they came as immigrants. And it's a country that is based on the ideal, on a principle of equality and granting freedom to people. And they reject all that. They reject that freedom. They reject having choice. They all want to march in step with a murderous ideology. And these are people who, they may be very well educated. They may come from very privileged families. They may have gone to the finest schools. They may have very important jobs. They may be in politics. But one thing is for sure, they are enslaved in darkness, and they have lost their humanity. And what's the basic element of humanity? Choice. Choice, being able to discern between good and bad, and the ability to choose good. That ultimately is the ultimate expression of our humanity, to choose good, to do positive things. That's our ultimate expression of humanity, and it means a belief in Hashem, a belief in one God, a belief in right and not wrong, in light and not darkness. But today we have many people around the world who are just stuck in darkness. And again, the next to the last plague in Egypt was that of darkness. And it was 3 days of darkness. And that darkness meant every person in Egypt was in their own world of darkness. Everybody was isolated. People could not reach out to their brothers. It says so right here. It says that they couldn't see their brother. They couldn't touch their brother. They were isolated. Their darkness put them in a prison, in a isolation cell. Torture, horrible, for the purpose of teaching them that this is not the way. But their leader, Pharaoh, was stubborn, and many people today are entombed in this darkness, and they don't have the wherewithal themselves to see through it and to make their way out of it. And in Egypt, it was only by virtue of Hashem that the people got out of the darkness. So if you're in that darkness, if you're in a world, if you're consumed with hatred, it doesn't matter who you're hating. If you're consumed with hatred, if your hatred is what motivates you, if you think that massacre and murder and mutilation and torture and rape is a way forward, is a good thing, you need to cry out and say, please, take me out of this darkness. Please, shine some light into the darkness. In our Parsha, we're told very clearly that, let's just read right here about that ninth plague. In the chapter 10, verse 21, Hashem said to Moshe, stretch forth your hand toward the heavens, and there shall be darkness upon the land of Egypt, and the darkness will be tangible. You can feel it, it's so thick. Moshe stretched forth his hand toward the heavens, and there was a thick darkness throughout the land of Egypt for a 3-day period. No man could see his brother, nor could anyone rise from his place for a 3-day period. But for all the children of Israel there was light in their dwellings. And yes, we are dwelling in light. As tough as things are today, and things are very tough here in Israel, there's just tragedy after tragedy, but there's also tremendous faith, tremendous trust in Hashem, tremendous hope, tremendous love, tremendous unity, tremendous chesed, kindness happening here in Israel. We're in light. And all you people around the world who are with us, you're in light too. Appreciate that light. Bathe in that light. Keep that light going. Don't let darkness overtake you. Chase away the darkness with the light. We know we can do it. And for all those people who are in darkness, I'll just give you a little heads up. The plague that followed the plague of darkness, after Pharaoh said to Moshe, go, you're not gonna, if I ever see you again, you're a dead man. And Moshe said, that's just fine. You're not gonna see me again. Believe me. We're gonna return the light, but you're not gonna see me again because it's over. Game over. The final 10th plague after the darkness was the plague of the death of the firstborn, and that's the death of the future. That's the death of the future. People who are in darkness, people who refuse to see the light, people who refuse to be able to discern between good and bad, evil and bad, good and evil. You're in darkness, and death is what follows, and there's no future for you. All you people who are marching, who are celebrating, the Houthim in Yemen, do you know what they've done to Yemen? Do you have any understanding of or what Hamas has done? Do you know who they are? Do you know who these people are? Do you know that they hate you? Do you know that they will kill you? Or Hezbollah or Iran? All you people who are marching and wallowing in darkness, death and no future awaits you. So I encourage you, wake up, open your eyes, see the light, change your ways. Thank you so much for being with me. Temple Talk.